Welcome to Outta Pocket with Michael Schrader, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM as part of your TGI Friday lineup. We just got done with Frankly Speaking Sports Carolina in the last hour, and the Carolina chat continues because I got producer Desmond Johnson, not only the producer of Tobacco Road Sports Radio, but also the host of the Rundown with Desmond Johnson on Saturdays. I usually make sporadic appearances talking about football. And he also hosts the Bleav in Panthers podcast with Skylar Callahan and Jonathan Stewart. Desmond, how are you doing today?
Doing good, man. How are you? How's your holidays been?
Doing pretty good. Holidays pretty smooth, which is kind of rare for the holidays with everything going on, but not too bad. And what's also not too bad is the Carolina Panthers the last 3-4 weeks. This is unbeknownst territory for the Panthers. Like when you were thinking about what their season was just a few weeks ago, maybe a couple months, it was looking pretty bleak. And now they might be in the playoffs.
I mean, they control their own destiny. Rundown's off, actually. We'll be celebrating our 5th season premiere. I don't know the date. It's not this Saturday. We're off. I'm actually showcasing some of the other Tobacco Road stuff this upcoming Saturday, the 31st. We'll be back January 7th with a brand new rundown, and actually was going to see if you're available for that. So we'll have that there. Hopefully we will have Panthers versus Saints with the NFC South crown on the line, because right now the lead will be on the line this Sunday. Panthers and Bucs. Just a complete turnaround from the first 5 weeks of the season underneath Matt Rule. Steve Wilks deserves all the flowers. Give them to him while he's still here. And I don't know what else the man needs to do to prove he needs at least the offseason and another year as the regular head coach of the Panthers. Just a fantastic job that him and his staff have done with this roster.
Yeah, and I was going to ask, because you follow the Panthers very closely, like them win their last 3 of the last 4 and just turning things around for Matt Rule. Like what Steve Wilks do? Because not only did you just change head coaches, but you traded away your star player in Christian McCaffrey, and now you're going on this run. It just doesn't make sense.
Well, honestly, we've talked about this on the Bleav in Carolina Panthers podcast, myself, Skylar Callahan, Jonathan Stewart, and we've basically echoed it every week. They simplified everything. Like I think Matt Rule was trying to go too fast. Like he had his hands in too many jars and he was trying to go too quick, and it was resulting in results that did not benefit the franchise. Plus, if you look back on it, Matt Rule tried to erase the identity of the Carolina Panthers and install his own. He wanted whatever it was he wanted in his image or whatever. He wanted to do that. And he wanted to erase the board clean and start from scratch. What Steve Wilks did was basically re-implement what the Panthers have been about for the past 27 years or whatever. People clown that, they haven't won anything or whatever, but they did have an identity. Like if you played the Panthers, regardless of who the head coach was, all the way back to Dom Capers, to George Seifert, to John Fox, to Ron Rivera, it's been the same thing. Run the football, stop the run. You're going to be known for a tough-nosed defense, a great linebacking core, good front seven. You're going to have a plethora, like a core of running backs. They're going to be running the ball. We're going to run it down your throat. We're not going to make mistakes. We're going to play penalty-free football. And that's basically been the formula for the Panthers to win. Matt Rule went away from all of that. So it took some adjusting from the ones that were still here. And now it's actually kind of cool because we're hearing players start to echo this in the media. Just this week, Shaq Thompson and Derek Brown have come out and said either they want Steve Wilks to be the head coach going forward. Shaq just came out on Wednesday on, I think on Jacina Anderson's podcast, and was basically saying that you could tell that players had not bought in 100% to Matt Rule's philosophy. And if you remember, Cam Newton said that in his exit interview last year at the podium. Sheena Quick, who was on the rundown with us a couple of weeks ago, we actually talked about this. She asked the question to Cam about the team, and Cam basically said, it sounded weird at the time, but it rings so true today, where he basically said he had the feeling that half the locker room wasn't completely in with Matt Rule. And he used the anecdote of, at the time I didn't understand it, but he was like, are you the pig or the chicken? And he was like, the pig, when it comes to breakfast, the pig gives its life for breakfast? You know, the chicken just lays an egg. So which one are you? Are you the pig or the chicken? And he's like, I don't know who is what in the locker room right now, but he knows about half of them didn't subscribe to what Matt Rule was selling. And now after going through everything in the offseason and Rule getting fired and we come out and find out why and everything else going on internally, Cam was right. Cam was right. A lot of these other players have been right too, that it was just a situation where kudos to David Tepper for getting out of it when he did, because it gave him a chance to salvage the season. If he had waited halfway through the year or waited the whole year, we would not be in this position right now. It's just a different vibe of the team since Wilkes took over.
And you could tell, like, maybe 2 or 3 weeks in, it was time for Matt Rule to leave, which you never want to fire a head coach that early in the season, but it had to happen. They had the guts to go and make that decision, and it could turn out in them saving their season. Steve Wilkes, I feel like the culture that he was there when the Panthers made their run, when Cam Newton was MVP, he was defensive coordinator. I think he was the assistant head coach as well.
Yeah.
And like he's kind of implemented a little bit of that culture into this team, I feel like.
And actually, more importantly, he was the defensive coordinator in 2014, the year before, when the Panthers were 3-8-1, starting December, won their last 4 games and caught up to the rest of the division and won the NFC South. That sounds like a familiar situation to me. So if you want a guy to lead you in a similar situation, why not have a guy that's been in that before? Similar to them signing Josh Norman this week, you know, familiar face for Panther fans. He was on that 2014 defense. He was a first-team All-Pro on that 2015 defense. And, like, I hear people, not as much now, but especially the past 2 or 3 weeks, I was hearing people that weren't Panther fans basically saying the Panthers are doing themselves a disservice by winning. They need to be focused on the draft. Oh, they're going to play themselves out of a quarterback. All this junk. And I'm just like,
I heard Panther fans say that.
Yeah. I'm like, they have to, I think they think that if they just get the right players that they can win. And we just saw that you can have the right players. Matt Rule didn't have a problem with picking out talent. Like, there's talent on this team. It's one of the youngest teams in the league, and they built it through the draft. Like, they've got key pieces that he had a hand in drafting. I'll never take that away from him. But he didn't know what to do with them. It's like he knew what ingredients to buy, but he didn't know how to make the cake. Like, he just didn't know. Or he bought, and I said it before, he bought ingredients for chicken pie and then got home with all of it and decided he wanted to make a chocolate cake out of it. Like, that's literally what he did. And it's like, you don't have the ingredients for that, Matt Rule, but he didn't care. He was going to try to make chocolate cake no matter what, because that's what he wanted. He changed his mind, but he already bought all the ingredients for something else. So Steve Wilkes just understood what he had. I think he sat down with Ben McAdoo and was like, look, this is what we have. We are going to run the football 35 times on a team if they will allow it. We're going to run for 160, 170 yards, control the ball, not turn it over. And we're going to let my defense hunt. And, like, it's as simple as that. That's literally all they're doing. They're not hiding or disguising anything. They're just running the ball. And I've said it also, this Panther team, there's no middle. Like, there is no, they play a decent game and still squeak it out. Either they're going to run it for 180 yards down your throat for 40 carries and have the ball for 38 minutes or whatever, or they're going to run it for 40 yards and never have the ball because the other team has it. That's the trick to beat this Panther team now. You have to keep the ball out of the offense's hands. The Ravens did it. The Steelers did it. Lord knows the Bengals just beat the brakes off of them. But that was a month or so ago, and they're playing much better now. And that's the formula. Run the football, stop the run. Works at any level of football. And Steve Wilkes recognized it and just decided to go full blown into the simplicity of the game.
And what would it take? I personally feel like Steve Wilkes has proved himself enough to be the head coach next year. What would it take these last couple of weeks to have Steve Wilkes be the head coach next year, or even take a step further? Maybe Sam Darnold is your quarterback next year.
I don't have a problem with Darnold being the quarterback next year if they're going to run this. Like, if this is what they're going to do, where Sam is protected, this is by far the best offensive line he's played behind in his pro career. So, and he's starting to look comfortable. Like, he's always looked like he had something. He was looking at something, looking for something, like, kind of looks skittish sometimes. He hasn't looked like that the past couple of weeks. And last week, he looked the most comfortable I've ever seen him in a Panther uniform, 250 yards throwing, a couple touchdowns, in complete control of the offense he's running. I don't have a problem. I mean, Darnold's 25. Like, we're trying to throw him into the trash heap, but we never really saw exactly what he had. And now we're starting to see a little bit of it. As it comes to Wilks, though, I know people want Tepper to take the interim tag off of him immediately. You can't do that. The Rooney Rule, basically, they can't make him the permanent head coach until they interview a minimum of 2 minority prospects, which is kind of nuts because Steve Wilks is a minority prospect, and that might prevent him from getting the job, because they have to go interview 2 others just to abide by the rule. But to answer your question, if I'm David Tepper, I probably need a division. I need a division title, and I need a home playoff game to completely sell me on Steve Wilks. Now, that's not me. I'm already sold. I understand it. I get it. But for David Tepper being an outsider, so to speak, didn't grow up here, not from the Charlotte area. He's a Pittsburgh guy. He understands that logic of having one guy that gets the team, gets the vibe and what you're going for. He saw what happens when a guy comes in and tries to build it on his own. It failed miserably. He went back to what was there already, the fabric, and he's seeing Wilks kind of lay that out. The excitement is back in the fan base. People are buying tickets. People are starting to buy playoff tickets. We haven't even made the playoffs yet. They put wildcard tickets on sale, pre-sale, and people are starting to buy them. That's because of Steve Wilks. So David Tepper's a $14 billion worth owner. He didn't get there by being dumb. I assume he's seeing what's happening and that Wilks is getting strong consideration. But to tip it over, if I'm David Tepper, probably need to see what happens in the next 2 weeks. If Steve Wilks gets this team to win out and they win the NFC South and they host a playoff game, which would probably be against the Cowboys, and they win that, I don't see how you can't hire Steve Wilks as the head coach. They would burn down Uptown Charlotte, literally. If if Wilks was not hired, they'd burn that stadium down to the ground because he's a Charlotte guy, West Charlotte High School graduate, played football at App State. Was one of Ron Rivera's top assistants on one of our best defenses ever. He's that dude. He developed Josh Norman. He's that dude. I'll be shocked if Wilks doesn't get the position.
So it obviously starts this weekend against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And if you don't beat the Buccaneers, that probably, I think he's the head coach, but it could go in the other direction. What does Carolina need to do to stop Tom Brady? Because this is Tom Brady. We saw it last week. He brought his team back, won the game, kept their hopes alive.
Thinking about what the philosophy is with the Panthers, I don't think that they're so much focused on what they need to do to stop Tom Brady. I think they're more focused on doing what they need to do to win. And if they do that, it'll automatically stop Tom Brady. And by that, I mean, the Panthers' formula is to have the ball long drives on offense. That would keep Tom Brady on the sideline. Although the way Tom Brady's been playing the past couple of weeks, maybe you want him on the field because they had a stretch. Was it last week where they had 4 turnovers in a row on 4 different drives, or 4 back-to-back drives? They put the ball on the ground, fumble, interception, fumble. And Tom Brady had a lot to do with that. They've been getting around playing like crap for 3 quarters and then figuring out a way to squeak a game out in the 4th. You can't do that against a team that's running for 195 yards a game and 35-minute time of possession. You can't wait around to the 4th quarter or you'll be down 23 points or whatever, like Detroit was last week. So the trick with Tom has always been make him uncomfortable throwing. I assume Tampa's going to do one of those quick 1.5 second, 2 second drop back, get it out of his hand type deals so he can stay clean. If Charlotte's getting back there, and not Charlotte, if Carolina's getting back there and putting hands on Tom Brady like Brian Burns, if he can get back there, it'll be a long day for Tampa because I'll be honest, Mike, I don't trust this Tampa team at all. They look horrible. Every time I've seen them, they just look like Tom Brady's missing 7-yard outs. He's missing guys. He's throwing behind them. It's almost like him and Mike Evans have never played football together. Although I did pick on this recent episode of the Bleav in Panthers podcast, we do our scores predictions. I said 28-10 Panthers, and that it wouldn't feel close. That I felt like Carolina's hit a zone in terms of what they're doing, and it's that time of the year where some of these other players are starting to think about the offseason. And I don't know if all of Tampa's completely checked in the first place. Carolina's locked in. This is playoffs. For them, it's been playoffs since last week.
Yeah,
2 weeks ago. Yeah, so they've been in playoff mode really after that Pittsburgh game where it was we have to win out to get in. And Tampa doesn't have to win out. Tampa can lose Sunday and still win the division if they win the following Sunday and Carolina loses. So it's not as much pressure on Tampa as it is for Carolina. So I honestly expect Tom to be rattled. It's one of those games where Tom Brady's going to be yelling at the offensive lineman on the sideline, I think, before the day is over, hopefully, Lord willing.
So if I'm watching it and see it, I need to take a picture
Yeah,
and send it
yeah.
to you. Make sure you get your credit. Well, it's not the off season yet. It's really playoff time for all these teams. Right now, Tampa 7-8 has Carolina, Atlanta afterwards. Saints 6-9 have Philly, which depend on their injuries. I know we'll talk to John a little later in the show about that. That could be a toss up, depending on who plays for the Eagles. And then the Saints and Panthers will have that final week showdown. Like, if you're looking right now, 2 weeks out, who do you think represents the NFC South and would be the most dangerous for a potential matchup against the Dallas Cowboys? Hopefully, Cowboys win. So
it should be Tampa Bay. Like Carolina has excuses. They have reasons as to why their record is what it is. They fired their coach 5 weeks into the season. They traded off their best player that the following week. They traded off starting wide receiver a couple days before that. Like their best cornerback just broke his wrist. The other cornerbacks on IR. They have reasons. They have reasons. Tampa, though, I can't. Other than the fact that their quarterback is 45, but they knew that going in, so that can't be an excuse. They just seem like they're still riding off of 2020, but they're not the same team. Like, you remember that team, you could not run on that team, that 2020 Tampa team. Like, they had Vita Vega and Ndamukong Suh in the middle of that defensive line. Levante David running around. You just couldn't run on them. And you can run on this Tampa Bay team. They are living off the reputation of their Super Bowl win 2 years ago. The offense isn't explosive. It feels like every time I see them, they're scoring 17 points or less, and they can't score in the first. It's supposed to be Tampa. It's set up for Tampa. The rest of the division, we knew the division was going to be down. If you looked around, we knew Atlanta was going to be down. We knew Carolina was going to be down. We knew the Saints were going to be down. And Tampa was the only one. They should have won this division 2 or 3 weeks ago, but they didn't. And the most dangerous team is Carolina, because Carolina has the best defense out of the division and they have the best run game. And in December, going into January, where most of these games you play are going to be outside and it's going to be cold, you want a team that's really good on defense, and you want a team that can dish out punishment by running the ball by committee. Detroit got blindsided. They weren't ready for it. It was super cold. Like, they didn't want to touch anybody, and they paid the penalty for it. It should be Tampa that wins the division, but I feel like momentum's on Carolina's side. We'll see if Carolina rolls Tampa Sunday, then I could see a scenario where New Orleans just falls back the next week and Carolina rolls them too. But who knows? It's the NFC South. I could say all this and they all tie this week and just make it. Like, what if Carolina and Tampa tie? I saw a scenario where if Carolina and Tampa both tie, they both could potentially maybe get into the playoffs, because the rest of the NFC is a mess too. It's not just the South; it's the whole conference is a mess.
Didn't we see that scenario with like the Chargers and Raiders last year? And then
I think so, yeah. Like,
got to the very end and let's kick the field goal.
Yeah,
that was the wildest one. We gotta get out of here for the commercial break, but before we go, Desmond, the producer of Tobacco Road Sports Radio, you're doing an awesome job. What's to come in 2023 that fans can look forward to?
Well, more of the same. More of the same stuff we got going on. We got some new stuff going. I haven't officially put it out there yet, but I feel pretty confident to say it. Longtime favorite Brandon Blakeney will be back live with Brandon Blakeney. That show will return, I Bleav, in January of 2023. Brandon reached out, wanted to start doing the show again. So he'll be on. I'll be helping him with that. Randy Pettit, longtime Bowman Gray announcer. We are working on syndicating the Pit Stop, which was running on WTOB last year. Now it's going to be running on, I think, 5 or 6 different radio stations across the state. And it becomes an hour-long block where the first 30 minutes is the Pit Stop. It's local racing news, local tracks, not just Bowman Gray. And then the second hour is called Rattling the Roll Cage, and that's also Randy Pettit. More national NASCAR drivers, Infinity drivers, Truck Series, that kind of stuff. So it's an hour of racing stuff that you can't get anywhere else. That's locally produced here in the Triad. That'll kick off mid-January also, or late January, before Daytona. So those are the 2 things I know off the top of my head that are coming. And then, of course, we're home for Charlotte Hornets, high school sports. We'll have softball, baseball coming up here in spring, actually in February. So that'll be coming up right around the corner. And check out the Bleav in Carolina Panthers podcast. As long as we're winning, we'll still be on twice a week, as long as we're still active and on. So we'll be on through the rest of at least the regular season and the playoffs. It's myself, Carolina Panthers Sports Illustrated beat writer Skylar Callahan, and Panthers all-time leading rusher Jonathan Stewart. And just Google Bleav in Carolina Panthers. You can find it on any major podcast platform.
Yeah, you got him on Bleav in Panthers podcast. You got him on the Rundown with Desmond Johnson, starting again next Saturday.
Yeah, we're off this tomorrow. Yeah, I needed another Saturday off, so we'll actually probably replay this. We'll probably play Outta Pocket over in the Bleav in Panthers episode from earlier this week, previewing the Tampa game. So, yeah. So, an excellent job, by the way, for Outta Pocket. You guys have been knocking it out the park. The TGIF lineup has been fantastic. You and Larry, the fools over at Franchise Players, you guys have been doing a fantastic job. Just wanted to say thank you while I had a chance to do so.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate you. You put in so many hours that nobody will ever see. And so thank you. But we got to get into a commercial break, get some advertisements in. But when we come back, John Cox is going to join me. We'll preview the rest of the NFL and later on some basketball. And this is Outta Pocket with Michael Davis. Stay tuned on Tobacco Road Sports Radio and WWBG 1470 AM. Welcome back to Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM as part of your TGI Friday lineup. Thank you so much to producer Desmond Johnson for allowing Outta Pocket to be on the air this fall and also stopping in and talking some Panthers football and that crazy situation in the NFC South. We're going to have to keep a lookout on for that. But right now, we welcome in Outta Pocket regular, my good friend John Cox. John, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Hey, and it's pretty good to have you, man. And I'm kind of surprised to see you after last weekend. You know, we're not going to touch too much on last night's Cowboys-Titans game, but with the Cowboys and Eagles, Cowboys did defeat the Eagles. I told you if you were going to come on the show, we were going to talk about it, especially if the Cowboys won. You weren't going to be invited if the result didn't go in my favor. But, dude, honestly, what a great game. Like, after watching that game, I can't really say that Philadelphia is a bad team. I can't say Dallas is a bad team. I just feel like we watched two of the better teams in the NFL play last weekend.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. If you look at what the Eagles were able to do without so many key pieces, obviously missing our slot corner, missing CJ Garner, our starting safety, missing our MVP, Jalen Hurts. All that stuff adds up and it really hurt us. But Dallas still put up 40 on us. It was a fun game to watch. Kind of hoping for a rematch in the postseason, not as an Eagles fan, but just as an NFL fan, just because I know how good of a matchup that would be, just for good football.
And honestly, in that game, it didn't feel like things were out of hand. Yeah, you were missing Jalen Hurts. You were missing a couple key guys. But once Lane Johnson went down, like apparently the reports are that he tore something in his abdomen. He'll miss the rest of the regular season. He might come back for the playoffs. If you can't get Lane Johnson back, man, that is a huge loss. How you think the team's going to hold up without him?
Yeah, Lane Johnson is obviously a huge piece of how the Eagles run their offense. He hasn't allowed like a QB pressure or a QB sack in an absurd amount of time, like multiple years. He's an anchor. He's a beast on the O-line. I recall you guys playing in Philadelphia at the beginning of the season. Micah Parsons was not a factor until Lane Johnson went down late in that game as well. And that's when Micah Parsons, kind of started showing up on the tape a little bit more and having an effect on the game. So, to lose a guy that can neutralize someone like Micah Parsons and allow the Cowboys' best player to have an effect on a game the way he does, it's not great. it's a little worrying. There's a lot of worrying stuff right now with the Eagles in terms of injuries. All the Jalen Hurts shoulder stuff has been a little shaky, and as well with the Lane Johnson, going to rehab for 3 weeks and then hopefully play in the postseason. It's a little weird.
And you bring up a good point right now is Philadelphia is getting hurt right now. Probably the worst time to get all your guys hurt, especially your stars like Lane Johnson, Jalen Hurts. And y'all have the Saints this upcoming week. Y'all haven't wrapped up the number 1 seed in the playoffs yet. You guys haven't wrapped up the division yet. It would take 2 Eagles losses and 2 Cowboys wins for you guys to end up being the 5th seed and playing that wild card weekend. But again, you got to get healthy. So as an Eagles fan, would you rather Philadelphia play to lock up that 1 seed to get an automatic bye at the first round of the playoffs? Or are you wanting Philadelphia to, rest some of their stars now so they can be healthy for an eventual playoff matchup?
To me personally, getting that 1 seed is the number 1 priority. But that shouldn't be for nothing. You're going to get a week off if you get that 1 seed. That should be enough to get a guy back like Jalen Hurts, hopefully. I have heard some discussion about, starting Minshew, but not starting your other guys in hopes that you lose the last 2 games. That way, when you get all those guys back, if they're rusty, they're now playing, a different team as opposed to who they would play week 2, whoever's left. That might be a better team than who they would match up with in the first weekend of the playoffs. That being said, I think that's a little bit silly. I think that you should always just try and win, go out there, compete, and whatever happens, happens. And I would also say that whoever we're playing in the NFL or in the NFC, they're going to have trouble if they come to Philadelphia and try to play us. That's not a fun place to play. It's going to be cold weather. It's going to be Eagles run the football, super heavy run game. So for me, that 1 seed is a priority. Obviously, you want to get Jalen and Lane rest if you can. But I think for this week, I think we should probably go out there and really lean on Gardner Minshew and see what he can give us before we try and rush back Jalen Hurts and risk anything else with him.
And I feel like whether you're on the road or at home, you have really good records. Like you're 6-1 at home. Obviously, it'd help, especially in January, to host teams at your stadium. But you're also 7-1 on the road. Like your first road loss came this past week to the Cowboys. Just wanted to remind you of that. But yeah, Philly's a really good team. That's why I didn't drop them, honestly, far in my playoff rankings, like the top core rankings that Jackson and I release each week on social media. Like there's a big drop off between 1-6 and then 7-8. And yeah. I still have Philadelphia ranked ahead of the Cowboys, which hasn't been a lot this year that I've put them ahead of the Cowboys. But I mean, you have to respect both these teams. And, maybe a team like the Green Bay Packers can sneak into the playoffs. Packers defeated the Dolphins this past week. And I wanted to post to you, one, I don't want to see Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs. They've won 3 straight. It's obviously Aaron Rodgers, so they always give them a chance. It's just like Tom Brady with the Bucs. You put Rodgers or Brady in the playoffs, you're going to have trouble. Do you see Green Bay making this last push and actually getting into the playoffs? Because teams like the Giants or the Commanders haven't clinched a playoff spot yet. Seahawks and Lions are barely ahead of Green Bay, but it looks like things are lining up for Green Bay to make it the playoffs this year.
Yeah, I think that everything looks good to the Packers, Commanders-wise. I think you can trust that the Commanders game with Carson Wentz at quarterback. I think the toughest thing for them, though, is just winning these last 2 games. You've got the Vikings coming into town this Sunday on the New Year. They're going to be playing for that 2 seed. It's kind of a 2-horse race for the 2 seed right now between the 49ers and the Vikings. And who knows, if the Eagles lose out, you could also grab that 1 seed if you're the Vikings. So they'll have everything to play for this week. If the Packers beat them, that would add a huge fear factor to them coming into the playoffs this year. If I were a Dallas Cowboys fan, I definitely would not want to see Aaron Rodgers in the postseason, given all the things that Green Bay has done to you in playoff history. He's not a good matchup, and he's a dangerous man. I would not want to see the Packers. With that being said, they don't totally control their destiny. They've got to rely on some other stuff happening, but I could see the Packers getting in, and I could see them making, winning one game, maybe 2 games, depending on who they match up with. You never want to count Aaron Rodgers out.
And you brought up a good point because the Packers play the Vikings this week. Vikings trying to lock up that 2 seed, not fall into number 3. There'll be 2 or 3 either way, but if they put Packers in the playoffs, that could be a rematch we see the first weekend of the playoffs, Packers-Vikings. I don't want to see the Packers or Aaron Rodgers in the playoffs at all whatsoever. Like, I don't want to see Tom Brady or the Bucs in the playoffs. Those 2 quarterbacks are kryptonite. It's awful. I hate it. Like, I respect everything Tom Brady does. Don't want to see him in. Don't respect Aaron Rodgers. Don't want to see him in either. But if the Packers win, they could face the Vikings that first weekend. Thankfully, if a potential Cowboys-Packers matchup, that would have to come probably in the NFC Championship game, which if we're there, I'm happy either way because it's been a long time. People like you rip on me the whole time, like you've never seen your team in the NFC title game. I'm like, I know that. Don't tell me that. But Miami Dolphins fans haven't seen their team in the AFC title game unless you're like 40, 50 years old. And they've dropped off, what is it, like 3 straight now?
Yeah, so
and
they
yeah,
started 3-0 and then moved to 8-3, and now they're 8-7. It's very concerning stuff.
yeah, they've lost 4 straight. I was a big fan of Mike McDaniel. Still am. He's a pretty funny guy. You can watch him on like Insta Reels, just scrolling through. Has a lot of quirky sayings. I'm kind of lost for words at what's happened to this Miami team over the last few weeks. They had trouble getting Jalen Waddle in the game, and then they got Jalen Waddle involved in the game this past week against the Packers, and they still lost. Do you have any answers for this fall off by the Dolphins?
A little bit of it is definitely Tua. The Tua stuff is a little weird. It came out this week that he was playing against the Packers in the second half, concussed again. He's into concussion protocol again. Something you absolutely hate to see from a guy who was balling the way he was balling. But if you look at this slide, it starts when they have to go to San Francisco and play the 49ers. And I think what the 49ers put and showed on tape helped a lot of these teams do what they needed to do to beat the Dolphins. They had Fred Warner. They were playing zone. They were taking care of business. Next week, they're in LA playing the Chargers. If you look at that, it's really weird the way they played Tyreek Hill. Most of the teams, before these games, they were sitting back. They were giving Tyreek Hill space because it's Tyreek Hill. He's a Corvette. He's going to blow past you. Now they're bringing those guys up. They're throwing him off his game a little bit. He's got to make a move before he's wide open now. It's disrupting all of that timing. And, that is how Tua makes his money in the NFL. It's all timing. It's all throwing the guy open. It's all predictions, all that good stuff that you want your quarterback to do. And that's his bread and butter. He can do that. He's great at anticipating the throw. But if there's one thing in the way of these timings, it's going to mess a guy like that up who doesn't have the strongest arm in the world and can't perform off schedule because his game is so much based around those anticipatory throws,
Or if he's concussed.
that as well.
Like John, I can't get the visual out of my head of watching him that Thursday night football game. He shouldn't have played that Thursday night football game after being concussed in Sunday's game, and just seeing like his hands freeze. Like that is the single most scared I have ever been for an NFL football player in my time watching as a fan. Like, I'm 24 years old, and I know that's not a lot of years on me, but I mean, that's saying something. If you see a guy on the field on his back and his hands are freezing through 2 commercial breaks, like, one is amazing. We saw him walk. We saw him play football again this year. But if you're putting your quarterback back out there with a concussion, like, come on. Like, when is enough enough? Like, I know they've dropped 4 straight. They've dropped them to pretty good teams, like 49ers on the road, dropped them to the Chargers, who were very desperate, dropped it to the Bills by 3, and the Packers, who are desperate. Like, they haven't lost to, like, some scrub teams right now. But
Well,
come on.
also what was interesting about the Miami game is the Packers came to town, and usually when you come to Miami, it's 90 degrees on your sideline and 70 on the Dolphins. Well, before the game, there were flurries. There were flurries in Miami. That game was not a Miami game. That game for the Packers felt like a September game. I mean, like an October game. Like, they were totally comfortable playing in that weather. And I think that might have, thrown the Dolphins off a little bit, expecting to play at home and be warm. And, again, just those things that can throw a guy like Tua off.
Yeah, and now they're faced with a difficult matchup this week against the Patriots in New England, where it's going to be cold. And looking at the standings, I don't know how this will play out. There's a lot of things that have to work out in terms of who gets what, but this could very well determine who gets that final AFC 7th seed spot between the Dolphins and Patriots. Patriots win, they're 8-8. They hold the tiebreaker over Miami. Jets are 7-8. Tennessee's really just hoping for the AFC South crown. I really don't see Pittsburgh or Vegas making a run. This could very well determine who gets in the playoffs. What do you see happening here? I'm assuming Tua is going to be out. I Bleav they announced that earlier this week. Tay Bridgewater is going to start for the Dolphins. So it's going to be Tay B trying to win a game against the Patriots. How do you see this one going in Foxborough?
It's always hard to tell when you play a coach like Bill Belichick. That being said, I would definitely rather see this Miami team in the playoffs as a fan than I would the New England Patriots. If I'm an opposing team, I'd love to host the New England Patriots. If I'm a playoff team, just with the way their offense has struggled. It's been super uncharacteristic for a Bill Belichick coach team. If you just look at all the silly mistakes, like that might be the worst way to lose a football game, the way they did 2 weeks ago against Vegas.
Okay, that should not have happened. Okay, so
Yeah.
so funny story. Jackson and I and my dad were in Jacksonville for the Cowboys Jaguars game. That didn't go out the way we planned, but we ended up meeting up later for just a sports bar or whatever, visiting him down in Jacksonville, and we're watching this game unfold. And literally, I mean, I don't think we've had a show since that game. Literally, we see the guy's foot land right out of bounds, toe first, and they call it a catch, touchdown. And then all of a sudden, the lateral that hardly ever works in football, and it's starting to work until they throw it back, and former Patriot Chandler Jones catches it, face plants the quarterback, runs in for a touchdown. Like, that's not a game they should have lost, but come on. They're never put in that position if the ref makes a right call. But Patriots, they've been used to 20 years of getting good calls. They can afford one regular season bad call.
Amen. Yeah, we got a little tuck rule makeup call in that game, I guess.
Hey, and I guess that makes up for it. I don't know, maybe because playoffs or whatever. It'll be fine. But we gotta get into a break, John. You got your Eagles, you got your Saints. Final score prediction for that one?
It's going to be tough. We have a lot to play for this week. We have their number one. We have their first round draft pick. So beating them would help us out in the future and would help us out right now. We're at home. We have everything to play for. That being said, it'll probably be a dogfight. I'll go like 24-17.
Saints?
Eagles.
Okay. Just making sure. Just wanted to see if you were on your toes right there.
And that's assuming Gardner Minshew is quarterback.
Yeah, which looks like, could be the best route. Make sure Jalen Hurts is healthy for the playoffs, because that's going to be the most important. You're already in the playoffs. You need to get your team healthy. But that's it for the NFL. When we come back, John and I are going to be talking hoops, because we all know that the NBA season starts after Christmas Day, right after the break. Welcome back to Outta Pocket with Michael Davis on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, TobaccoRoadSportsRadio.com, and WWBG 1470 AM as part of your TGI Friday lineup. Just want to remind you guys, you can follow Outta Pocket on Instagram at @OuttaPocket_TRSR. We're on Outta Pocket on Instagram. We're on Facebook. You can follow our social media content throughout the week. We always have some good stuff lined up there. And this has been a great year. And this is the final segment of Outta Pocket for the 2022 year. We'll come back at the start of the new year. And so, John, what better way to end the year with hoops? NBA, the season starts after Christmas Day, and it really winds up because this week we saw perhaps the greatest single game performance. You and I were talking before the show, perhaps of our lifetime. I mean, Luka Doncic facing the New York Knicks, Jalen Brunson, former Maverick, out because of injury, but Luka puts on the game of his life. I mean, he puts up 60 points, 21 rebounds, 10 assists. He intentionally misses a free throw at the end of regulation because, mind you, they were down 9 points with 35 seconds to go, and the first team ever to make a comeback in that situation. It's like one out of like 1,300 some. Like, it's a crazy number. And Luka was able to do it, intentionally misses free throw, somehow gets his rebound and just flops it in there to tie the game. He kind of makes this trolling face, and then the Mavs are able to close it out. This is the first ever 60 and 20 triple-double in NBA history. I mean, obviously, you could probably say Wilt may have done it, but we don't have the official stat or whatever. But come on, for a 6'7" point guard in Luka Doncic, that is one of the most impressive moments of our lifetime. And I just want to get your initial reaction on what a performance by Mr. Luka Doncic.
Yeah, obviously, I mean, it's a great game. Luka is, gosh, the NBA is in such a great place right now. When you look around the league, so many great stars, young stars, just guys doing their thing. It seems like almost every single team has like a guy in the MVP race right now. But yeah, it was something else. Luka is a very special kind of player, especially if you look at, the toolkit that he's working with. He's not the most athletic guy in the world, but he's just a guy who can do anything on the basketball court for you. If you need him to ISO bucket and get a three, he can step back and he can hit it. He can do that. If you need him to drive and dish to the corner, he can do that. Pick and roll, high pick and roll, rebound. It's all there. It's incredible on the offensive end. As for if it's the best performance I've ever seen in my lifetime, I'm not sure. The Kobe 81 game is just iconic. I don't know if we'll be talking about Luka's 60-20 in, however many years it's been, the same way that we talk and we have talked about Kobe's 81-point game in the same way, but nonetheless, it was incredible.
I get that. Like, Kobe's 81 game was historic. I mean, because you don't see a lot of players in this day and age like scoring that many points in a single game. Obviously, you have the picture of Wilt holding up the paper of 100, but we weren't around for that. And Kobe did put up 81 is incredible. But the first ever player to do 60 and 20 triple double. I mean, if you asked me who I had as a favorite to do that, I mean, I wouldn't have that conversation because it didn't happen until this week. I would say a big man. I would say somebody like a Joel Embiid. If you told me he did that, I'd be like, wow, and wouldn't be shocked. But for a point guard to do this, I
Yeah.
mean, and he didn't have help. Like, you could even see the therapeutic like circles. I forget what they call that.
Cupping.
Yeah, cupping. What an easy term to remember or not remember in my case. But like, he's obviously been carrying the team on his shoulders for way too long, doing too much. And that begs the question, like, are the Dallas Mavericks asking him to do much? Like, how can they provide him help? And if they don't get that help, like, how far can this Mavs go in the playoffs?
Yeah. The Mavericks are in a very weird situation. It doesn't happen very often in the NBA. But Luka is too good too soon. When they took him in the draft, they were bad. They were a very bad team. And just by adding Luka to that team, they have become contenders in the Western Conference. They made it to Western Conference Finals last year. And Luka does that by himself. The only other player I can remember this truly happening to is LeBron in Cleveland. You're in that weird spot where you're not good enough to, win the finals. If you're good enough, you can get to the finals, obviously, as one player, but you're not good enough to win the finals, and you're not bad enough to get, a meaningful draft pick to trade for another co-star or to draft another co-star to be alongside Luka. They're in that like weird middle of the pack phase. So, like their only hope really is that someone becomes available in free agency and chooses to play with Luka. I don't know how much of a hot spot free agent destination Dallas is, but if I was an NBA star, I would play with Luka Doncic because he can get you the ball anywhere you want him to.
I mean, Texas is a really great place to live. Not saying that because I'm a Cowboys fan and eventually would like to move there, but no state tax. I mean, but the Cowboys brand is a lot more, valuable to play for than the Dallas Mavericks. I mean, in the NBA, you're going to look for Boston, you're going to look for LA, you're going to look for Miami, you're going to look for the Knicks, even though they've been not good the last 20 years. You're looking for those bigger brands. Mavericks are kind of like that B tier, maybe even like B plus at best, just because they haven't had success outside of Dirk. And I don't know, man. Like, to me, Luka is the MVP right now. I mean, dude is averaging 33.6 points, 8 rebounds, 8 assists, almost 34, 9, and 9 in a way, shooting over 50%. He's only 23 years old, and he is literally carrying this team on his back right now.
Yeah.
Like,
and they only have 3 less wins than the number 1 seed in the West. They're currently at 6th seed. They're only 3 wins behind the Nuggets. And the Nuggets have a 2-time MVP. They have Jamal Murray. They have Aaron Gordon. They have Bones. Like it's not as empty of a roster as the Mavericks are.
and you look at all those teams that are ahead of the Mavericks right now. You got the Pelicans. Well, the Pelicans are a surprise, but they've been stacking on the draft and free agency. You got Zion, Ingram, trade for McCollum. The Grizzlies, they have Ja Morant, but they have like several other guys. Clippers have Kawhi, PG when they're healthy. They just trade for John Wall. Suns, Booker, Ayton, like Chris Paul, like all those teams ahead of them are stacked. And then you have Dallas, who has Luka and scraps.
Yep.
I mean, it's not the same. I don't know if you would even make a case for Joel Embiid, but Embiid has Harden. Embiid has PJ Tucker. Like, Embiid has guys surrounding him, whereas Luka Doncic doesn't.
Yeah. I'm a big Embiid fan. I love Embiid. He's a top 5 player in the NBA because of what he does on offense and defense. Probably should have been the MVP of the NBA last year, being that he literally led the league in scoring and also played some of the best defense at the center position in the NBA. That being said, the Sixers do have so much talent on that roster. It's just a matter of, can we get a coach in the door, please, who knows how to use it? I'm not a huge Doc Rivers fan. I don't feel the need to hide it anymore at this point. Just with the recent resume that Doc has put together. But yeah, the biggest thing holding Joel Embiid back from being a winning player is his head coach, unfortunately.
And Doc Rivers has often been looked at as one of the best coaches in the NBA, which helped with the resume he built in Boston, having Rondo, Allen, Pierce, Garnett, Perkins. If you want to go to the bench, Tony out, like having those guys helped a lot. But then kind of falling off when he went to the Clippers and had Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, JJ Redick. Nothing materialized of that. But who would you want to get as opposed to Doc Rivers in Philadelphia? Is there anybody that like jumps out to you?
There's no one that stands out. I mean, you could bring D'Antoni in, and you could,
You'd want D'Antoni
Daryl
over
Morey.
Doc?
He could complete his like Houston Rockets Infinity Gauntlet, like just adding the pieces.
Oh my god!
He really wanted to. I mean, I don't know. It's so hard in the NBA to find a good coach. If you look around the league, there's not a ton of them, and a lot of the times, like it's just you're in a bad situation here, and then you're in a good situation here. Like last year, people were calling the Celtics head coach at the beginning of the year, like, oh, he's bad. Then he goes on a finals run. People were saying the same thing about Steve Kerr. He can't coach young players. He can't develop. They go on a finals run. So much of it, the Heat coach, Spoelstra. Yeah, Spoelstra, like, he's been criticized and hated on. He's probably one of the top 5, at least intelligent NBA coaches in the league.
Of all time, but
right.
okay.
He's like, it's just, it really ebbs and flows. But if you look at Doc's history, he hasn't put anything together. I don't know. It's hard to say and point to, I want this guy or that guy. But
you just want a different voice in the locker room.
Just someone else, please. Someone else. Someone who's going to play young guys, who's going to try new lineups, and isn't going to lose games to the Washington Wizards when Joel Embiid has a 48-point game.
Well, it would be funny if D'Antoni actually coached the Philadelphia 76ers, mainly because James Harden, there's rumors, okay? We'll preface with that, of James Harden wanting to leave Philadelphia to go join Houston. Now, I would say this is crazy, but I feel like we heard this 1 year ago when James Harden was wanting out of Brooklyn, and we're like, why? The team's stacked with KD and Irvin, everything. And James Harden is like, no, I want out. And then he denied the rumors, and then he like doubled down on it and then went to Philadelphia. And now literally a year later, we're hearing the James Harden trade rumors to Houston. Of all teams, the Houston Rockets. Makes absolutely no sense. They're the worst in the league right now, unless he's wanting to play with Victor Wembanyama or something. By the way, kudos on the name. Now we got it down pat. But John, like, what? Like, I don't know if these rumors are true or whatever, but if they are, does this say more about James Harden and him just not wanting to commit to the team? Or is it more saying about the league where when the going gets tough or whenever you feel like it, hey, let me request a trade?
Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. We were talking before, it doesn't make sense that he would want to go back to Houston. If there was another name floated out there, like a Miami, somewhere with warm weather, beaches, establishments, that he enjoys, I would see it happening. Like if you wanted to go out to California or play alongside, Luka, maybe something like that, or down in Miami. Obviously that would be a great spot for James Harden, Miami.
I hate that. I hate that. I do not want him coming anywhere close to my team.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's just kind of the state of the media right now, where if a player isn't winning and we expect more of them, like we expect them to be a championship winning team, we just want them to pack their bags and leave because of like the ring culture that has developed, I think.
And he's been chasing that ring for a while. I honestly feel like Philadelphia, in my opinion, are still favorites to win. I feel like Boston's doing good. I feel like Milwaukee's doing good. Brooklyn's kind of exceeding my expectations, but I still feel like Philadelphia gets in the playoffs and can run it through Embiid and everything. They'll be fine. But John, we're closing out the last episode of Outta Pocket for the 2022 year. Is there any favorite memories of Outta Pocket or sports come to mind when you think back on this year?
Oof. The first episode was a great episode. That was, I think it was right after the Tua Bengals game. Just kind of discussing the merits of Thursday night football. That was great. I love being on the pod with Cordray. I love his Outta Pocket Seahawks takes.
Oh my gosh.
3 weeks ago, he was calling Geno Smith the MVP of the NFL.
Hey, I kind of set him up for that one though.
Absolutely ridiculous. That's all that stuff's just good times. It's always fun to be here. Good to shoot it, talk sports and all that good stuff. Definitely.
Hey, I love talking sports as much as the rest of you. John, you know that, we would just, anytime we could find time during work to talk sports, we'd stand there and then our boss would look at us and they're like, "What are you doing?" We're like, "Oh, sorry, we got a job to do." But it's all good fun because guess what? This is our job now and we can do it and not get in trouble for it. But appreciate you being on. Appreciate Desmond. Appreciate Jackson. Appreciate guys we've had on like Ryan Frick and Jason Cetek, Ian Black. Just so many names I could honestly miss. Ben Camperman. And we're going to have a better year in 2023. Continue building. Tobacco Road Sports Radio is going to continue building. You can catch Outta Pocket on Fridays at 4 on Tobacco Road Sports Radio, tobaccoroadsportsradio.com, WWBG 1470 AM as part of the TGI Friday lineup. You can catch my wrestling podcast on Wednesdays as part of the Wednesday wrestling card. Now that, dude, like that's crazy. And then obviously you can catch franchise players following this show. But until then, we will see you guys. I'm not going to use that next year kind of goofy stuff, but we will catch y'all next week.